prospering OS2. Well, when you think about other software communities, for example, you think about the Linux community, there's a lot of money flowing into the Linux community, there's a lot of people, a lot of mind share being accumulated there. It has the aura, the atmosphere, it has the feeling of a prosperous platform. And yet the product itself doesn't cost anything. The source code doesn't cost anything. So how come they can achieve the aura or the atmosphere, the feeling of prosperity around a product that's free? It's a matter of psychology, it's a matter of mentality, it's a matter of perception. And then the question is, well, what can we learn from this, and what can we do, or what should we be thinking about in terms of having that kind of response or viewpoint or perception about OS2 itself? In other words, it's more than just marketing. Marketing is maybe, well, I've heard of it, or, well, I know a lot of people who are buying it. Well, that's marketing. We're talking about a perception or a feeling or really an emotional response that's not fear or, oh, it's bad, disgust, disappointment. No. We're talking about developing an emotional response to OS2 or at least perception from OS2 that more accurately reflects the technical greatness of the product. So therefore, we're not fooling anybody. This isn't like Microsoft marketing where you produce a perception or an atmosphere about a product that has nothing to do with whether it's good or bad. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about aligning the perceptions of people with how good the product really is. So that's education, that's not perception. Now, when you talk about education or you talk about people's perceptions, there's an idea of conventional wisdom, an idea, well, let's just make the safe choice. And this is what a lot of businesses, a lot of managers do, especially late in an economic cycle. If we're in a relatively late stage where a lot of people have made a lot of money, they become a little cautious and they say, let's just take the easy way out. Or as my old boss at NASA used to say, none of us are getting paid enough to take any risk. And what do you end up when you have that kind of mentality taken to the extreme? Hey, look, everyone else says the world is flat, so as far as I'm concerned, the world is flat. Well, 500 years ago, there was a certain segment of society that believed that the world was flat, and that affected their approach to exploration, commerce, trade, whatever, and it held a lot of people back. And there was, there was another guy who said, no, I'm willing to challenge that assumption. And he was successful. Or how about, anything that's new is automatically better. New medicines are obviously better, safer, more effective than old medicine. In the 50s, it was thalidomide, and it may have been effective, but it had a lot of terrible side effects, a lot of birth defects. And then there was something called fentanyl, which came out recently, and I think I've got those two names reversed. It's a combination of chemicals that were designed to help people lose weight effectively, and the problem is that it causes a lot of bad side effects with people's hearts. So just because something's new doesn't automatically mean, well, it's better. That's a conventional wisdom or a belief, a trap that people fall into, and it's not a technical problem. You see, if it was a technical problem, what would have happened is 500 years ago, a bunch of people would have gotten out their measuring sticks or, made some observations to try to determine whether the world was round or not. And the average person just didn't do that, did they? The average person didn't say, well, what's the technical answer? They said, well, let's just go along with what everyone else does. And the same thing with medicine. The average person doesn't have the time to sit down and look at a new medicine and do a chemical analysis and do a side effects analysis and look at the medical side effects or the medical activities responsible on the human body, because the average person doesn't have the time or the knowledge or training or the incentive to do it. They will say, well, look, hey, 5 of my friends got it, and they're happy with it, so I'm going to go ahead and get it. Well, guess what? The same thing happens with software. The average person doesn't have the time to sit down, the inclination, the know-how, or whatever, to become really well-educated on software, what it is, how it's designed, how it works. The average person just wants to go out and buy it and use it, and that's it. Just like they go out and buy and use a toaster. You go out and buy and use a toaster, and you don't become a genius on toaster design. Go and buy a refrigerator, and you don't take a course in refrigeration, physics. mechanical engineering. You don't do any of that kind of stuff. You just go out and buy and use it. And people will take that same approach to software. Well, where do we get some of these beliefs then? And one is the media has a tendency to categorize or classify things into groups. And a lot of this is the advertising media. The advertising media will take a demographic, a certain group of people, will make certain assumptions about them, and will lump everybody who fits that demographic into that certain category and say, for example, OS2 is only used by a bunch of over-the-hill nerds who are just clinging to it. When the reality is that there's an awful lot of people who don't fit that demographic, and there's also a lot of over-the-hill nerds who don't use OS2. So you see, it doesn't work. But it's convenient if all you care about is numbers, if all you care about is marketing. Well, this many people can't be wrong. Well, this many people can't be wrong about the world being flat either. There's a lot of things that just because everyone else believes it doesn't make it so. If it's good enough for so-and-so over there, it's good enough for me. And once again, it's not a technical decision. It's not a decision based on the facts. It's not a decision based on a careful, rational explanation or examination of what's going on. It's just simply taking what's the most emotionally satisfying thing. Well, I feel comfortable making this decision because I'm not going to be different from so-and-so. It's a level of emotional response, emotional satisfaction, and it doesn't have anything to do with the technical merits of the product. Also, another thing that happens is that once Windows gets on PCs, it's hard to make it go away. Well, why is that? It's the same reason that they introduced the metric system. They teach it in school. They taught it in schools for years. And what do we still use? We use the English system. Because once something is entrenched and really becomes part of the culture, people don't want to change. There's not a technological reason why we couldn't all be using the metric system right now in the United States. There may be a cost involved in making that change, yes, but that's not the main reason why the average person communicates in English terms. It's because it's become an embedded part of the culture and something that people just naturally assume or expect or feel emotionally comfortable with. Okay? Gasoline-powered cars. You know, there's no reason why we couldn't have, no technological reason why we couldn't have electric or alcohol or any other kind of fuel. There's a cost associated with it. There may be a benefit associated with it. But that's not why most people are going to make their decision on a cost-benefit analysis. They're going to say, I feel comfortable driving with this because this is what I've used for years. I know how my car is going to respond. I know what kind of mileage or horsepower or whatever I'm going to get out of my car. I know when I go to a certain location, gas will be there. And they have an emotional level of comfort with what they've been using all along. It's not based on somebody sitting down and doing calculations. The average person just doesn't think that way. And the same thing with Windows for their own PCs. The average person doesn't sit down there and say, let's find out if Windows really should be what we're using. They say, well, look, it's been around, other people are using it, and I feel more comfortable settling for Windows. They have an emotional response, not a technological analysis, not a technical response. We might say that they're thinking with the right side of their brain, not the left side of their brain. And this is the way people make a lot of decisions. So it's a cultural problem more than a technological problem. In other words, we might say that Microsoft's been waging a cultural war for the last 10 years, and IBM tried to fight back with a technical war. But we live in a culture. We don't live in a technical society. We don't live in a society of deep thinkers. We live in a society of people who respond more on emotional level. Why else would there be the kind of TV shows that we have today? Exactly. Or anything on between 7 and 9 p.m. on most weeknights. Most people will take the path of least resistance, so once the trend starts, people will just kind of go along with it because they just go with the flow. It's interesting that we have in American society today wonderful prosperity, at least that's what we hear in the news. But who bothers to actually scratch beneath the surface and look at the reality of the situation? The stock market is up about a factor of 12 since 1980, but in recent years, the value of stocks has not reflected earnings of companies. It's reflected speculation. So in other words, people have an emotional response about a particular stock is no longer a technical one. If you took the cumulative corporate, federal, and personal debt, in 1990 it was around $6 trillion. In this year, it's about $12 trillion. Now, if you let me borrow $6 trillion over a 10-year period and not have to repay it, I can put on quite an air of prosperity. I can make things look and feel as if they're prospering, and some people will be doing better, but the bank balance will be awfully bad. And what's happened is people now have changed their attitude toward money. They no longer feel uncomfortable about having a solid debt. And people run up huge credit card debt in times of so-called prosperity because that doesn't fight them, it doesn't bother them. So people's attitude or cultural or emotional response to debt or to money issues is different. The average age of cars in the United States is over 9 years. How can that be? It's because of the large percentage of the people which are driving older cars. Why are they driving older cars? Because they like to drive old cars? No, because they can't afford a new car. If it's prosperity, why aren't so many more people driving older cars? Well, it's an illusion. There's a certain percentage of the population which is prosperous, the media picks up on this, it's a good story, and everybody else kind of goes along with it slowly because they say, hey, it's going to work. And because their attitude toward money has changed to the point where being in debt doesn't really bother them anymore. If an attitude of prosperity can exist for an economy that is $12 billion in cumulative debt, an attitude of prosperity can exist for an entire economy, surely it can exist for one small product. Well, what's the reality? I want you to go back in time in your mind. Just think back now. 1996. September of 96, an OS2 Warp 4 is being released. It's coming into the marketplace, and one of the things that we don't have that we wish we had, and maybe people use as an excuse to not get OS2. What do they say? Can't get any device drivers for that product. Well, now we have an entire bang or set of device drivers just for video cards that's encapsulated in a product that will be regularly updated and has been licensed by IBM. And we have numerous other device drivers for devices that didn't exist 3 years ago. So we're much better off with device drivers today than we were 3 years ago. Now, is that the perception among people that OS2 is doing better today than 3 years ago? No. Yes.
One sort of reason that definitely historically, OS2 has always been very well provided with drivers, give or take a month and a new version has been released, and the situation has tended to be shaky in some areas when it's been allowed to go out when they're released, when it'll be a while for the next one they're released. It could be just, we just had a fresh release.
Well, I'm not talking about the server now. I'm talking about Warp 4 Desktop Edition that has not had a new version since 1996. Okay. But even 6 months ago, we had more drivers than we had 2.5 years before that. So the number of drivers available for OS2 has been on a steady increasing path. But if you ask the average person out there, do you think you can get device drivers for OS2? Anybody who is familiar with OS2 would probably respond, no, it's really hard to get device drivers. Yes?
I can have to back that up. I find a cocktail party at an argument with an IBM program who said there's no device drivers available for OS2.
You hear that? There's no device drivers. The world is flat.
Microsoft is good product.
Yes, Bill Gates, great software guy. Dr. Frankenstein, great hardware guy. All right. What about Lotus Smart Suite? A full-blown native OS2 suite. Not perfect, but no platform, no application is perfect, but definitely a very nice product. Did we have Lotus Smart Suite in a full-blown version of all 5 major apps 3 years ago when OS2 Warp 4 was released? No. We had 2 native applications that were still not up to the specifications that they are today. And therefore we have a better product now than we had 3 years ago when Warp 4 was released. So we have more applications now. Star Office, for example, we not only have more applications, now we're getting open source applications for OS2. We have an embarrassment of free choice here. We can choose between 2 different suites. In addition to, of course, for wonderful products from Sunbelt Systems, which are still here, and I bet they'll still be here. Now we basically have the equivalent of 3 fleets. And what will the average person who's heard of OS2 say? Well, I don't think you get applications for that. But that's not reality. The reality is we have 3 times as many suites available native OS2 today than what we had 3 years ago. That's the reality. That's the technical fact of the situation. But the perception is we can't get any applications for OS2. I'm sorry, go ahead. Microsoft Office does have a lot to do with that, but you start off. Right. One of the things that happens is people say, well, because I can't get this one particular mainstream suite, therefore I can't get anything else. See, that's illogical. It's illogical to say because I can't get this one package, there must not be anything available for us. Go ahead.
There are actually two most well-known suites, Microsoft and
Corel. Right.
Corel still gets the OS2 certificate for the 61.
We do a 3.1 version.
But if you go to two most difficult suites, intentionally for OS2 one day, and through
Subterfuge.
or a evil very thing. There's not for the physical thing, specifically rejected as
Right. So the people, right, it's an illusion that there's nothing simply because there's not the things that people expect to see. Right.
I'm still using those real
And you're happy with it, aren't you?
yes.
Great.
So I've got described as an additional word for reference. So I haven't changed too much. Since I read some satisfaction expressed in YouTube earlier this year, maybe, and they're now upgrade to everything but, a new version of everything but OS2.
According to Warp Expo West last month, our Lotus man over there said there would be a version 1.5 for OS2 to be released approximately the end of this year. So there are continued upgrades, and in fact, most of the upgrades in that suite would be, in addition to some bug fixes, would be enhancements to Lotus 1.2.3 to make it more efficient, probably faster, and improve some things in it, get it up to full equality with the Windows platform. I personally asked him if he would please speed up the database product, which is Lotus Approach, because it's just too slow for me to make an effective demonstration or report use of it. But the point is that it's there, and I believe they'll probably address that in the following release after that. The problem here is that the perception of people is that OS2 is going away, OS2 applications are going away, OS2 drivers are going away, but yet the numbers don't say that. The numbers say we've got more now than we had before. We had more each year than we had the previous year. We had more device drivers, we had more applications. The applications continue to be supported. An open source platform like Star Office is going to continue to be supported because people will find a way to support it. Because it's open source, that means that the source will find the people who are willing to solve the problem. They don't have to go out and hunt for it. It will find them. All right, how about... Yes, the 1.16. So we've already had one update just in the last few months. Okay. How about Netscape Navigator? Did we have Netscape Navigator native OS2 in September '96? No. I think it was still in beta. I think it was a beta that was out. But we didn't have the full, the final release. And now, what do we have? We have 4.6.1. Well, we had, also before that, we had version 4. We had 2, and then 4, and then 4.6.1. So what's the perception? The perception is, well, I can't get an update browser for OS2, can I? Well, we have the latest. All right, Java. Java is obviously a strong point for IBM. It's not really as strong on the desktop as it could be, but there's still those enhancements. They still keep coming along. But the point is, Java is not the only enhancement. It's just one of many. Year 2000. Somebody might not even bother asking if OS2 is year 2000 compliant because they say, well, it's dead anyway. But really, they're putting the cart before the horse. What they should be doing is asking if their own platform is Y2K compliant. Does anybody know how many patches you're going to need it to run Windows 98 version 1, Office 97 version 1, and Internet Explorer. How many patches are you going to need to meet merely Microsoft's standard Y2K compliance? You're going to need 8 patches. I know because where I'm working now, that's what they pay me to do, is put patches on Click.
More on that. If it's an open secret that Windows 98 Windows 95 effectively running in Office, so that's
Right, install.
so Microsoft wants to install is not upgrading that. Whereas IBM has brought out the launch 2000 and your own upgrade in 2007 is in 2001.
Yes, you can get IBM DOS in year 2000 compliant flavors, yes.
So Windows 95, 98, and 4 is running on a year 2000.
Yes, a year 2000 suspect platform. Right. Go ahead. If you look on their website and you look at the definition of Y2K compliance, they're playing a game. They're playing a very interesting game. One of the games they do is they shorten the lifespan of the product.
Oh, yeah, right. I think they're running a year.
And what happens is that a lot of products that you would say, well, if it's ready for the year 2000, you better watch out when the year 2038 comes. But then the question is, well, what about if the year 2038 isn't one of your calculations? Who knows? Go ahead.
What was the first industry that had to deal with 2000? The mortgage industry.
Because they look 30 years into the future.
Because when they write first year mortgage, since 1970 was the first credit.
Yes. But what happened is that a lot of people have come to the conclusion that because the label on the Windows box and the date on the Windows box is newer than the date on the OS2 box, that Windows is obviously more ready for Y2K than OS2 is, when in reality that's just not so. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. And because a lot of people make their decisions based on the appearance of the situation rather than the reality of the situation, people are buying into non-Y2K compliant solutions. I've had very interesting conversations with people who call up on the phone and say, can you come out and do some networking? And I say, yes, but we want to check your Y2K compliance. He said, that's okay. We just bought a new computer last spring. And I said, well, then you're not Y2K compliant. He said, what? Can I send you Windows 98? And I said, Windows 98 is not your 2000 compliant. He said, you need to tell me that every copy of Windows 98 that Microsoft is selling in this country is not your 2000 compliant. I said, in the world. Why limit it to this country? Y2K compliance does not have a border, limitation. It doesn't need a passport.
No.
Yes. The government of France sued Microsoft because they falsely claimed that it was compliant, and the government of France found out it was not. But the point is that even if you could make it so by 8 patches, how many people are going to take the time to go and get those 8 patches and put them on? And furthermore, will the product maintain compliance if people are going to have to constantly reinstall the product when it crashes over the next year? You can have a lot of people who have compliance systems, and then it crashes, they put the CD back on, they forget a patch, and all of a sudden the system's not compliant, but they don't find out until 3 months when they're closing down the end of quarter on their accounting, and the numbers just don't fit. Or it crashes. Right, it crashes, and then they put it back on, and all of a sudden they remember the patch that time, and only the data during that span where they forgot the patch is inaccurate, and they missed it until the end of the year. Go ahead. Well, Warp 4 needs a fixback, but that fixback has been available since mid-98. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Probably should have moved the computer. Why don't you turn in the cards for you?
In its original release. This is true. This is true. This is why I stated it's been ready since mid-98, not its release date 96. In other words, it still needs people to take care of it. That's true. Warp still needs people to take care of it for Y2K. But the point is that the solution is available and has already been available well ahead of the window that many companies are bumping into. So it's not something where it's a non-support issue. It is a support issue, but it's not the degree and intensity of support issue that Windows platforms have. What I'm trying to say is the perception is. The perception is it's easier to support Y2K on a newer product when that's not so. Go ahead.
And the problem with that is on Microsoft, they updated the page, like we run and then replace.
Yes.
You're going through, double critical accounts.
Okay, let me give you an example for that. On my work machine, it's NT4 with Service Pack Hub. And I had a 3-month-old package that Microsoft had sent us for testing the Y2K compliance with Microsoft data systems. And we ran through it, it said NT4, SP5, compliance. And then a few days later, I said, I need to update this database because, we've got Windows 98 version 2 is out there now, and it said unknown, and I know, of course, that Microsoft should be saying compliant. I updated the civil database. I ran it on my machine just to see what it would say. It said Windows NT4, SP5, compliance, update, pending. What does that mean? It means that we're going to say it's compliant, but you better pay attention and put some more stuff on here to fix Y2K. So what happened is that the compliance level literally went backwards.
Yeah, I've seen similar things with
Yeah, this changes. It changes from week to week. So what I'm saying is not that there can't be a solution or that there won't be a solution. I'm not saying that all solutions already exist for OS2 without service. I'm not saying that either. What I'm saying is the perception and the reality don't match. But the reality is OS2 is closer than anybody else that I'm aware of, except maybe Linux, of being Y2K ready, and it's easier to support for Y2K readiness, whereas Windows is worse off and harder to support for Y2K readiness than any other platform I'm aware of. That's the reality. Now, let's look back to 1996 once more and ask about the grassroots movement for OS2. How many Warpstocks have we had through the year 1996?
None.
None. But now we have 3. And they come along every year like clockwork. And they're not perfect yet, but they're getting better. We're getting a base of people who have experience year by year producing quality conventions, quality expositions for OS2. And as time goes on, that group of people will get better and better at it. And people become more and more comfortable and used to the idea of going to an OS2 convention and expecting to see good products, good presentations, and a lot of good friends and having a great time. But 3 years ago, when OS2 4 came out, what was the perception? And what has the perception been since then? The perception is, well, there's not really a lot of interest in OS2. There's a lot of interest in OS2 if we have more conferences now. And we have more conferences being added. We had Warp Expo West a month ago. Next spring, the Ponte Group in Arizona is going to put on an OS2 conference. Now maybe we'll have 3 OS2 conferences each year. And 3 years from now, we'll say, wow, we had 9 conferences since I last addressed you on the topic. Go ahead.
That's just
Warpstock Europe. Okay. So I mean, as you said, we're just scratching the surface here. It's building and growing, but that's not the perception. Perception and reality don't match, they need to match.
My impression was the Europeans did not vote for the Microsoft
Well, the European educational system tends to focus a little bit more on reality and less on fashion. That's one reason. It's a cultural difference, basically.
The version I heard was that we have Microsoft thanks to this. They said that the world's most arrogant sales rep PC manufacturers and informed them that they would sign one after another on the dotted line every 5 seconds on Microsoft forms.
Well, a lot of European countries have had more experience with dictators in the last 100 years than American people have.
Manufacturers said that never would do unless lockstep to IBM with sales reps were utterly dumbfounded because they hadn't had the
Well, if you have a choice between incompetence and corruption, I will choose incompetence every time. All right, so the first step we need to producing this atmosphere, this environment with this perception of prosperity, is to be careful how we represent OS2 and the OS2 community to other people. If we go around saying, yeah, I'm still using OS2. Now don't just get the impression of a guy who's on the edge of a cliff and he's just hanging on by his fingernails. And he's just putting every ounce of his strength into just gripping the side of that cliff just so he doesn't fall backwards, so he doesn't die, or just so he doesn't disappear. And that's all he's really focused on. I'm still using OS 2. Whereas really, when you think about it, if the progress of OS 2 has been tremendous in the last 3 years, the technological progress of the platform, we should really be thinking more futuristic. In the future, this is going to be a solution for a lot of people's problems. It's going to answer a lot of people's questions. This is going to be something that a lot of people will probably want to see. Maybe in 3 years, if we make this same amount of progress, well, it'll be a totally different viewpoint of perception. We should be saying, I already use OS 2, or why don't you? Instead of saying, well, I still use it, I'm one of the last few, we have to watch our language, because we don't want to give people a false perception or amplify false perceptions based on our language. Our language should be positive because we are positive about a good product. Yes? We've never had a full accounting of the number of modems we use. Okay. The latest number I heard was approximately 1996. There has been a cumulative total of 10 version 2 or version 3 of around 13 million copies that shipped. The problem is when we say copies. At IBM, a single sale of 40,000 copies could be listed as one sale. We don't know that. Also, we don't know the number of people who pirated copies of OS 2 and was never reported. We don't know the number of people who bought it and never installed it in shelfware. We don't know the number of people who installed it, used it for a while, and then quit. It's guesswork. For any platform. Because if you went on the basis of the number of units of Windows licenses, for example, when in 1991, 1992, 1993, every computer manufacturer who used Windows as a product had to pay a Microsoft licensing fee for every CPU, for every PC they manufactured, even if they stayed in the warehouse and never had Windows preloaded, and those went into the mythical Windows user base. Well, it's pretty obvious we don't know those numbers either. Okay.
I remember that at that time, if you bought OS 2, Windows counted that as a sale.
Yes, Windows counted as a sale because they received a licensing fee from IBM, and I believe still do. For Windows 2, Windows 3.1 code is in there.
Windows 2 is according to the IBM. It was something like a year ago. The contract between Microsoft and IBM and Windows 2 code itself. Finally terminated, IBM got full rights to it.
I have heard that rumor.
But there are other components, for example, a lot of the
A lot of the kernel code, HDFS 386. Which was probably a large percentage. Yeah, that's a large percentage of what their licensing fee was. Which means that IBM would not be particularly upset if people started buying more OS 2 because they really wouldn't have to give nearly as much money to Microsoft as they used to. But another example is, have you tried OS 2? Yes. What are you implying when you ask that? You're implying, well, other people are trying it, which is true. There are always a few people who are trying it. It may not be millions, but there are some. Have you tried it? Yes also implies that sooner or later you're probably going to want to try this product. Sooner or later you're going to get fed up with what you're using, or you're going to wonder if maybe there's something out there that's better. Even if you're using a platform you like maybe Mac or Linux, you still may want to try this product. You may find that you like it better. Who knows? Some people, having eaten steak, find out that they like it more than hamburgers, even though they still like hamburgers. You can also say, I enjoy using OS 2 Work. Not just I use OS 2 Work, but I enjoy using OS 2 Work. People will say, I use Windows. There's not a lot of people that will go and say, I enjoy using Windows. I really, really enjoy every day using Windows. The point is, we enjoy using OS 2. We use it by choice. We use it because we enjoy it. And we should be very honest about that. We should tell people that. It's true. It's reality. Operating systems of the future will have what qualities? What do you think? Will operating systems of the future be multi-threaded? I think so. Will operating systems in the future be object-oriented? Yes, I think so. Will operating systems in the future be more reliable? They better be. They better be more reliable. Well, the question is, if all the qualities we can ask about operating systems in the future apply to OS2, what does that make OS2? Make OS2 a futuristic operating system. It has the technological qualities of the operating system in the future. One of the problems with OS2 is that it's been futuristic for a long time already, and people don't understand that if something is futuristic, ahead of its time, that it doesn't really get old, does it? Just because the date on it might be old, the release date or the version number. That doesn't make it old technology. If, when it came out, it was already ahead of where the competition is today. OS2 is a futuristic operating system, and people should be exposed to that idea. I use the futuristic operating system called OS2. I don't use an operating system based on 30-year-old technology, namely VMS, called Windows NT. I don't use an operating system based on 30-year-old DOS technology, namely Windows 98. I use the futuristic operating system. Be positive about it. These are qualities of futuristic operating system. Now, beyond our own personal language that we use, our own way of expressing ourselves to people, we need to recognize that this is a culture war. When you're in a culture war, what do? You don't use a gun. You don't use mathematics. You use ideas. If OS2 is the technologically superior choice, and we believe it is, and all evidence we have says that it is, then if people are still not going to buy it because it's technologically superior, then we should supply them with an emotional reason to buy it. If that's what they need, if they're looking for some kind of emotional satisfaction in buying a product, it may be a stupid reason to buy a product, but if that's the only way they can buy the product, well, then we should look at trying to supply that. Yes? If you go to the CompUSA in Nashville, Tennessee, I have seen OS2 consistently on the shelf there. I haven't seen it pushed. I haven't seen many copies of it, but I've consistently seen it on the shelf.
CompUSA moved OS2 from their inventory.
When?
Within the last 6 months.
Well, then there may be just the unsold products on the shelf. That's quite possible. Okay. But it's interesting that most companies tend to respond to the market pull. 6 months ago, you probably didn't see a lot of Linux on the shelf there, but you do now, right? Why is that? Is that because there's a big, powerful company who's really pushing Linux to be sold by these major corporate retail outlets? No. Because these companies are responding to what people are asking for. They say, hey, people are asking about Linux. They're coming here all the time asking about it. Maybe we're going to have something on the shelf. If people came in and asked on a regular basis, you guys have a Linux too? I've heard it's a great operating system. I'd sure like to buy a copy here. If enough of those happen, companies respond. They respond positively to people with money in their hands who are asking about a product. Linux proves it. Go ahead. Yes, one of the main things that preloads accomplished for Microsoft is not putting Windows in people's hands, but rather being a placeholder to prevent other things from being put in people's hands. Between 1992 and 1995, which product sold more at retail in the United States? Windows 3.1 or OS2 Warp 3.0?
DOS.
No, I don't think DOS. I don't sold both of them. Windows 3.1 sold a lot of copies, but OS2 Warp 3.0 sold more copies at retail through retail channels from 1992 through 1995. This was Warp 2 and Warp 3.
Windows 3.11 upgrade got sold in bulk.
The 3.11 upgrades made up, but 3.1 sold, according to Will's access of CompuServe Canopus, Windows 3.1 was outsold by Warp during the period 1992-1995. This is what he reported in print several years ago. The problem is, of course, The retail channel was only 10% of the market, the OEM freeloader channel was 90% of the market. That's the real problem. And nothing short of the Department of Justice is going to do a lot about that, with possible exception of the fact a few manufacturers are bravely looking at limits. But that still doesn't benefit us to direct. Go ahead.
There is one of the problems. If you try to go to the store and say, I don't want Microsoft on it, they will tell you, well, we will not sell you the machine, or if you want to be actually manufactured.
Well, if you're talking about a major brand, this is true. What I have found is that there's an awful lot of small computer dealers who will do anything for a sale because many of them are retiring Microsoft partners to business. Go ahead.
I'm not like that. I'm going to a place like Prime,
Right.
or Micro Center,
Right.
or Popular State.
Mhm.
Actually, that's why I have told you, for example, in the past, they are progressive funds. If you want to buy a system like Microsoft, here's the number of computer packers. Please call them, and they will tell you when it's not operating. They will direct you that, and they will tell you.
Right. They just don't want that kind of business, and there's several reasons for that. One is support issues. Another is that most of these companies are not freeloading operating systems one at a time. They have an image on a disk, a master disk, and they just simply use the machine to produce a large number of them.
Built into the part of the culture world, I am very proud of Microsoft. Thousands up to the managers.
Those are posters.
Oh, give them one.
Not one at a time, you don't. Crummy posters.
Right. Right.
Those stores can make part of also those stores can make
Did you check out of the room? I emptied it. You want to talk to them or you want me to talk to them? I want you to. I'm still here.
Right. And sooner or later, the retailers will realize as the raw price of these physical materials decrease, the only way they're going to feel price is to remove the growing percentage of their base cost that's in a Windows license. Because what happens is the hardware price is dropping to $500 to $400 for a PC. They're going to pay $50 or $60 to Microsoft.
Sorry.
That is more than the profit they're making on delivering that PC. So it's more than 50% of their gross margin on the physical hardware.
Yes.
It's been given to Microsoft. It makes it hard for them.
Then again, we didn't use the veteran part of that. I don't know if we should have gotten the credit back for that. Or they never gave us a key. They never unlocked it.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I wonder if on your PowerPoint presentation up there, if you
I don't have PowerPoint. I don't use Microsoft products. It looks like it, but it's called one that's freelance.
Do you have anything about what the DOJ is?
Oh, who knows?
The Department of Justice?
Yeah.
Well, let me see. In 1993, the Department of Justice sent tanks, armed men, and poison gas into a church building in Texas. When the Department of Justice decides that's the way they need to treat Microsoft, then we'll get some response. Because I think Microsoft was more damaging to the economy than 100 people in a church building in Texas.
I follow the two main Microsoft lawsuits, the Department of Justice and Corral. At the moment, in the Microsoft DOJ case, we are waiting for the judge to actually make the ruling. As a standard procedure, it will be appealed, not be surprised. It's going to be appealed no matter what. It's the way like it. And the problem is Microsoft has done two things. They have imposed the federal judge publicly, and they have told him he's incompetent. And every other federal judge in the United States has heard that, and it's not pleased, which is going to affect the way that Microsoft's case is reviewed.
Okay, let's talk about the DOJ offline here. I don't want to run out of time here.
Microsoft, no matter what, in the next 2 years, going to get hit with some very nasty publicity as their case is
If you want to play tip of the iceberg, go to www.billparish.com. That's BILLPARISH.com, and see why Microsoft is $55 billion behind on accounting for labor costs on their books, and then figure out what that means. Okay, let's move on here. Windows was originally sold to people as an act of being an individual. You can put this yourself on your own PC. It was sold originally to the desktop users. This allows you to make the screen look the way you want it to. And it's that old box that wants you to have a boring green screen, or a boring monochrome screen, or a boring dock menu program. Well, we won't listen to him. We're going to do it our way. This was the original Microsoft sales pitch. Well, it's interesting. Microsoft now is on the other side of the glass window, aren't they? Now they're selling to the big corporate managers. They're saying, well, you need our server software to manage all these Windows PCs and to control them and to keep people from putting extraneous software on them. You see how they switch sides? And well, now, since Microsoft is itself in the position of an oppressor, well, then we should be able to come behind them and offer people the liberating idea of maybe trying OS 2 for a change, or Linux or whatever else they want to try, but particularly OS 2. People need to feel comfortable with OS 2, and the best way to make somebody comfortable with something is if they don't think it's strange, weird, unusual, or maybe ostracized. The way to make people familiar with something is if they can see it. And the problem is that people don't really see OS 2. It would be nice if I had a notebook computer and I could go around to a lot of people and say, see, OS 2. The next best thing is where I work, or where I worked before, I had OS 2 on my machine and people would come in and say, wow, that's a beautiful Windows screen you found there. And I said, it is a beautiful screen, but it sure isn't Windows. I showed them how easy it was to use it, but that's easy to use like Windows. I said, yeah, but there's one thing about it. Unlike Windows, it works. And people got the idea, the impression that, hey, maybe this is a nice little system. But it's hard to believe in something you can't see. You heard the saying, seeing is believing. That's part of culture today. People expect to see it on TV. If it's never been on TV, maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe it's not real. Of course, now the internet is beginning to substitute for that, and that's a good thing. If I didn't find it on the internet, maybe it doesn't exist. Well, it's not a problem. You can find OS 2 on the internet. But the point is that OS 2 needs some kind of simple, ubiquitous, inexpensive way to demonstrate what it looks like, what it's like, and some low-level marketing so people will feel comfortable about it. That they won't have this emotional idea that nobody supports it. I think you can download these demo discs from a variety of places on the web, but I have not been really comfortable with a lot of the demo discs.
Are you checking it out?
They don't really give me the impression that I could just slip into it like a glove, which I promise you, a lot of Windows users will try to do. They slip into it like a glove, and within a week or two, they're like, this is what I want to use.
Very much not to end up with Charles my corporate nerds.
But the demos need to bring out that kind of a flavor. So this an apparent or delusional cycle of application poverty. One of the things to do is to stress the fact that we have applications that they can run on their current platform that will also run on OS 2. And you first stress the application, right? What you do is you tell them something that they don't have to change the operating system to use. There's a variety of things that can do that. Well, we'll get to some of them in a minute here. The DOS vendors, for example, they want to fail pretty soon. They have some source code that's not going to be very valuable to them in about a year or two. Why is that? Microsoft is planning to kill DOS support inside their desktop operating system. I have seen a pre-release copy of Windows 2000 that has no DOS phone. Maybe you can't run DOS applications on it. And why is that? Because there's too darn many people out there who are not buying Windows applications. They're still using DOS applications. And there's two issues there. There's a support cost. You have to support a DOS person. But the even bigger issue is you can't run a Windows application if they're happy with what they've got. So what you do is you just simply cut their legs off and go and buy new legs. That's basically what Microsoft wants to do. Well, what's going to happen to these vendors who've been making and selling and still getting money on DOS products and DOS upgrades, especially, like, for example, accounting applications, when suddenly their apps don't run on Windows anymore? How much is that source code going to be worth? Well, not a lot. maybe some OS2 ISPs can license or even buy the DOS products from these companies. And then we can go around to the accountants and say, hey, guess what? You don't have to change the product that all your users are trained in using already. You don't have to change that. That all your files from the last 5 years are the format that they're in. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to go out and buy a whole new application, because what we'll do is we'll take your computer and put an operating system on it that can continue to run the program you've been running all along. And then you make money on upgrading the operating system, and you make money on continuing to sell them the same application that they were buying before. And they like that. And then some enterprise OS2 ISP can take that source code and put a nice workplace shell front end on it and sell that as an experiment. It's something doable. And it's something that will probably become very viable over the next years. Another thing to do is to use Java applications. Java applications are great for little applications, not big applications. Go ahead. From IBM? A lot of them will not, because when they go out to buy new computers, because their old computers are not year 2000 compliant, when they go out to buy the new computers will be preloaded with Windows 2000, and Windows 2000 doesn't run DOS, so IBM DOS will run on them. Or they may have to format the machines and put DOS 2000 on them. And the point is you go to this person and say, look, you're going to change your operating system anyway, why don't you change it to something that gives you more capabilities instead of less? Okay? So the point is that Java is something which is kind of getting there, but it isn't really there yet, except for specific applications, smaller applications, demonstrations, like entry-level applications. Another thing is the fact that the Star Office and Lotus products, they already run on the platform they're already using. So if they already run on the platform they're already using, if some of these people begin using these new applications, if, for example, we can offer them some reason to, for example, with Star Office, there's a cost issue right there. There's a cost issue, and also support is going to be awfully cheap. Usually open source systems, you're going to be able to find somebody who will support it cheaply. Go ahead.
It's even better than you just said, because when you make comments about Java for small applications, in Java 1 this year, I saw a major company that sells software to Wall Street traders. They have a full-blown 100% Java application that is feeding out with live data feeds from the internet, letting their traders conduct.
Sounds like a great opportunity.
Going back in databases.
And all we got to do is get them to run the same application on a much better platform than they always do.
People are writing more than just little applications.
Good. So it's turning the corner. It's turning the corner. So Java's turning the corner. These are things which, in the future, when we look 3 years ahead, what are we going to say? We're going to say, well, just like now, we're looking 3 years back and saying, oh, we've come a long way. We're a lot better off now. 3 years from now, what are we going to say? Now, we've come a long way. We're a lot better off now. So then, shouldn't our attitude, our expression, our approach to the platform, shouldn't it emphasize or accentuate that positiveness? It should. That's where that aura or atmosphere of prosperity comes from, when you realize that we're really better off. That technically, technologically, we're better off. Application-wise, we're getting better off. When you realize that, and then you can help other people realize that, the perception of a dead product goes away. The perception of a living, growing, prospering product, that's what they'll get. Also, remember that familiarity with an application leads to a degree of comfort. If a person gets familiar with an application, and then they can run that same application on another platform, the fact that it's on the platform is not really bother them a whole lot. If you tell them to change both the platform and the application at the same time, it can be done, but you've got a much bigger bridge to cross. Exactly. And look, for example, on this chart, you can see that this is adapted from a chart from a book called High Tech Sales by a man named Peterson. I read this a few years ago. The best way to get somebody to say yes to a big sale is to do what? Get them to first say yes to a small thing, a small sale. Rather than trying to make the leap all at once, if you can make the leap in two small jumps, this is easier, because it's easy to say a small yes several times managed to say one big yes. You say to the person, well, would you like to change your operating system and all your applications? Or, would you like to change your operating system and several of your major applications? It's going to be very difficult to sell that. There will be a certain percentage of people that will say yes, a certain percentage. But your percentage will be much higher if you say first, hey, guess what? We've got a better app for you here. I think you'd be more comfortable with that app that's better, more reliable, or whatever, or cheaper. It's got a better app for you. And once they say yes to that, you get your foot in the door. Maybe you've made some money on the sale, or you made a friend. And one way or the other, you've had the person make a small yes. The next time you go back for a bigger yes, and you say, well, would you like to change your operating system to something better? Since they've already said yes, there's a level of comfort there. But if you try to give them the whole thing at once, this is a little bit more challenging. By the way, how has Microsoft used this? Jumping from DOS to NT is a big yes. And not a lot of people want to make that yes, so what do? They said, well, we're going to pump you from DOS to Windows, we're going to pump you from Windows 98, we're going to pump you from Windows 98 to Windows NT. So one little yes, it took about 10 years, but a lot of people are going to be willing to say yes to NT solely because they said yes so many other times to Microsoft already.
No, Tom's never finished.
A free demo is a wonderful yes. So, getting a full version of something, usually more costly, more investment. If they can get a light demo, entry-level version of an OS2 product, this would be a good goal for every OS2 ISP to have something ubiquitous so people can get their hands on it and try. One of the difficulties is trying it on a non-OS2 system. This is why I think it has a Java version that demonstrates the capabilities that their full version, their native version offers. Then more people can try it and become comfortable with it. So the point also is that your low-end sales will subsidize your high-end apps because you'll make a lot of money off of a lot of small sales.
Well, if you're still doing
Your foot's in the door for future sales. The person's already said yes, and you can get both high-margin sales from your high-end OS2 apps, OS2 solutions, and you can have market share from your low-end stuff. That's what Microsoft has done. We can learn from that. We can learn from the Linux. Linux has done it without a major corporate sponsor. Now, somebody throws money, they're coming in. Proof of concept, I've got a bus bench in Nashville. And one of my bosses saw it the other day. I played it real cool, he still doesn't know I did it. But it's something that can be done. It's $100 a month is what it costs. You can advertise OS2 your own way, on your own website, to a local OS2 or even a PC user group through a SIG, special interest group. You can tie it into a product or service you already sell. You can do cross-marketing. And I'm planning an educational marketing campaign. This is the next step of what I've already been doing to target specifically young people coming out of high school with an academic awards program to put academic copies of OS2 in their hands and to advertise to colleges about great students. And so make this kind of connection, make a cultural statement. Prosperity is an attitude. Let's make sure we have the right attitude. Well, I'm afraid we're out of time, folks. Thanks very much for attending the presentation.
We're going to ask that everyone leave the room so that we can